So I want to welcome you all to our presentation. Hold on one moment. Our presentation is called The Intersection of Behavioral Health and the Law. And I think I said a little bit earlier, and I hope some of you heard this, we have also Lindsay Sizemore here from Georgia. And after Jennifer and I present, Lindsay Sizemore is going to go over their program they have for forensic peer mentorship out in Georgia. So here we go. I'm going to go over some housekeeping real quick. So first of all, we are kind of on a time crunch. So we will try to answer questions as we go, and Jennifer will be monitoring the chat box for now. And so if you have a question, please use your raise the hand tool, and you can find that if you go under participants, and it's an option under there. If we don't have time to answer questions as we go, we will try to get them at the end of the presentation. So first off, I want to introduce myself. I am Maureen Bailey. I am the Peer Support Program Administrator for the Healthcare Authority Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery. I am a person with lived experience, and my previous position was the Enhanced Peer Services Program Administrator. I was brought on to the HCA as part of the True Blood settlement. And I was an element lead, and my responsibility was to co-create a continuing education training with OFFMS, and I will introduce Jen Popchakakim in a minute from OFFMS. And this training is a continuing education training for certified peer counselors and also for other people who are supporting individuals in our criminal court system. And the purpose of that was not only to educate peers about our criminal court system, but also to educate the other professionals about peer support. So I would like to introduce to you Jennifer Popchakakim from OFFMS, and she'll talk a little bit about herself.
Welcome, everybody. As Mo said, we worked on this curriculum jointly, so it's a joint project with HCA and Office of Forensic Mental Health Services with the SHS. And I feel so happy to be here and so happy to share our work that Workforce Development and DBHR has done with this curriculum. And in the interest of time, we'll just jump right into it. But I'd like to introduce Lindsay Sizemore.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody, all the way here from Georgia. My name is Lindsay Sizemore, and I am currently employed at the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network as the Forensic Peer Mentoring Training Project Director. And I'm also a woman who's in recovery, so I have the lived experience, and I'm able to contribute to my community today, helping just to successfully help returning citizens return to the community, and doing all I can to strengthen those collaborations within the criminal justice system here in Georgia. I'm going to get into the program in depth later, so I'm really excited about that. And I'm also going to share bits and pieces of my story with you today, and how everything has basically been intertwined and how I'm able to live a life of passion and purpose because of that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. So as I mentioned earlier, the Enhanced Services came out of the True Blood settlement agreement. And I have a little video here that kind of sums up why True Blood is and why it happened. And so I'm going to play this. It's about 6 minutes, and then I'll give a brief overview of the elements of the True Blood settlement agreement.
I'm Megan from Vancouver, Washington. My husband and I, Johnny, we have 2 kids.
Johnny, Megan, and their 2 boys, being affectionate.
We're a nice, quiet family.
My name is Johnny Jones. I've been dealing with mental health most of my life. Then I met Megan, and I was pretty fine for a while, and then I just kind of relapsed.
When he was arrested, it was the first time that we were away for longer than a couple days. So that experience was hard, him being taken away from us. The first time the police were called, they came out and Johnny talked to them and they're like, well, it's not against the law to be mentally ill. We can't do anything until he does something. And they gave us the number for the mobile crisis, and on there it said only available Monday, Tuesday, and Thursdays. And this was a Friday, so I'm like, great. When I called the crisis line, they said, well, basically the same thing the police said. There's nothing that we can do until something happens. We need him to call. We were left to deal with it on our own.
An office placard reads, Kim Mozoff. Through a window, a woman types.
My name's Kimberly Mozoff. I'm the director of the Treatment Facilities Program at Disability Rights Washington. In Johnny's case, they tried a lot of different things before they encountered the police. They called for help, but those services weren't available. They called for crisis services. They weren't open at the time. Eventually, when the police arrived, the police did what the police do, which is assess if there's a potential crime and arrest someone. And oftentimes the police will make the arrest because in their minds, taking someone in crisis to the jail might be a better way to get that person services than not. Unfortunately, when someone with mental illness is arrested and taken to jail, that access to services, it doesn't happen. And in fact, they end up doing much worse.
They didn't even take me for a mental evaluation. They took me straight to jail.
He was in jail for 2 months. He was so far into a psychosis that he was refusing his medications.
It was just horrifying, just being locked up in a place, no familiar faces. I'm already paranoid, thinking people out to get me and stuff, and they put me in jail.
Within 24 hours of his arrest, I was researching. I found an article in the Seattle Times about True Blood.
Seattle Times headline reads, Rights Group State Reach Settlement in Competency Lawsuit.
The True Blood lawsuit is relatively complicated, but at heart, it's about ensuring that people with serious mental illness who are in jail are getting the treatment and services that they need in a timely fashion. And that often means moving them out of the jail and into a treatment facility in a timely fashion. Unfortunately, the state wasn't able to do that. So in 2014, we filed a class action lawsuit, AB versus DSHS, or versus Washington State, which is more commonly known as the True Blood lawsuit.
After a trial in 2015, the U.S. District Court ruled that the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services was violating class members' constitutional rights. DSHS was eventually ordered to offer competency evaluation and restoration services within 7 or 14 days.
So even with a court order, the state was not able to evaluate and move people out of the jails in a timely fashion. So the court found them in contempt and imposed fines. And that ended up being over $80 million in contempt fines. In 2018, we decided to take a step back and think more creatively about this. Was there a way to sit down with the participation of the state and think about this problem more broadly? Why were we seeing so many people being arrested and funneled into the criminal legal system instead of into treatment? We talked to stakeholders throughout the state about what they thought the solutions were, and we came up with a very detailed settlement agreement that was meant to make some longer lasting changes that would actually make a dent in this problem and would actually improve people's lives in the long term.
The agreements within the True Blood settlement are wide-reaching. Some of them include more facilities where people in crisis can go for help instead of being arrested, short-term housing for people transitioning out of facilities, funding for programs that provide increased training for officers, mobile crisis 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and peer specialist training programs for individuals with lived experience.
My name is Daria Farivar. I am the Community and Legislative Liaison with Disability Rights Washington. I'm part of the public policy team, and my role is to make sure that True Blood class members have a way to meaningfully engage in advocacy and with the settlement. As we had class members standing up and telling their stories in a really courageous way, it really, I think, inspired a lot of other people to also tell their stories, which might be a little bit different, which might have happened in different states, but you really realize that almost everyone has had some kind of interaction with these systems.
It doesn't just affect the inmate, and mentally ill people have families that love them and have kids and have homes.
It's not all about me anymore. I have a wife and kids to take care of. I gotta be stable enough to do so.
I don't want anyone else to go through what I went through and what my husband went through in jail and what my kids went through, not having their dad around.
Disability Rights Washington has achieved so much through the True Blood case. It's not just a class action anymore. It has just become a way that we can rethink the mental health and criminal legal systems and how those two interact together. Moving forward, there's more work to do. We need to make sure that we're implementing this in a way that truly works and is truly effective.
No sick person should ever end up in jail. That should be the last place they should end up, is in jail.
So thank you for staying through that video, and it pretty much sums up the heart of True Blood. And then out of the True Blood settlement, there were quite a few elements that came about, and I am just going to go over a few of them. And you can do a lot more research online about the True Blood settlement agreement. Please, you can go on the DRW website, you can go on the DSHS website, and you can find a lot more information. This PowerPoint slide gives a little bit of an overview of all of the elements. As you'll notice, there's this big blue arrow below that says Enhanced Peer Support Curriculum, and that would be the continuing education curriculum that Jennifer and I co-created, as well as a lot of other subject matter experts. And people from our peer community came together and offered their input and feedback on the curriculum as well. So one of the elements that came out of this, and I'm going to talk about the ones that are employing certified peer counselors with lived experience in our criminal court system. So we have our Forensic Path program, which does outreach and engagement to individuals who have a higher likelihood of being re-involved in our criminal court system. And then we have our Forensic HARPS program, which is modeled after our traditional HARPS program, but it supports people who qualify with certain criteria, and it offers peer supports, plus it offers subsidies. So our normal HARPS program has a smaller amount of funds available. Our FHARPS program has more robust funding so that we can help people really get stable and not re-enter our criminal court system. And then there's the Outpatient Competency Restoration Program. So traditionally, individuals who were ordered to competency restoration had to go inpatient to a hospital. This gives people the opportunity to get that competency restoration out in the community where we know people do better and get well. So it gives people an opportunity not to be in jail or not into our inpatient settings. So in our curriculum, we go over a lot of this information, so I'm not going to go over it in detail, but I just really wanted to point out that big blue arrow below. Peer support is really important, and it is integrated in a lot of ways in the True Blood Settlement Agreement. And one more thing, so at the end you see those jail bars. I have a dream of getting our peers in there. And I feel that if we had a peer support system when I was involved in our criminal court system, maybe it would have shortened my life out in that community. So I'm really passionate about this work, and when they fill this position, I am still hopefully going to be involved. So the True Blood settlement is a phased implementation. So we had phase 1, and phase 1 is going on. It started in 2019 and goes to 2021. And our phase 1 region was Spokane County, Pierce County, and the Southwest Washington region. Phase 2 is our King County region. And then phase 3, they're going to look at the opportunity to expand or modify the first 2 phases, or look at integrating into new high referral regions. So this is our manual, and this is the cover to our manual. And I know a lot of you were commenting on the picture, and Jennifer Popchakakim, she had taken this picture and we incorporated it into the cover of the manual. And so Jennifer Popchakakim is going to take over right now and talk about the 11 areas of focus that we have in our curriculum.
Thank you, Mo. Thanks for the introductory piece on the True Blood settlement. And as DRW talked about there, they started to think more creatively after the fines and kind of how can we solve some of these issues and changed the system somewhat. And so the implementation plan was developed, and the enhanced peer curriculum and this curriculum development grew out of that kind of creative thinking process. How can we, affect the system in a positive way? So, and as Mo had mentioned, it was co-developed with HCA Healthcare Authority and DSHS Office of Forensic Mental Health Services, and specifically workforce development. And as Mo said, there were a lot of subject matter experts, and peers were also included, as well as some external stakeholders, and contributed. The peer group was great in contributing pieces and reviewing the material at different points in time. So I just wanted to call that out. And so for our curriculum, or the enhanced curriculum, we picked out 11 areas to focus on that were primary pieces of the behavioral health and the law. And for simplicity and kind of ease of reading, we divided these up for this presentation into 3 kind of focus areas. And the first area is all the foundational material to kind of lay the groundwork. The second section, overview of key components, some of the key components of the system, and then supportive approaches, and that kind of rounds out the curriculum. Okay, can you flip it, Mo? All right, so first I'm going to start off and talk or kind of introduce the foundational section. And again, these are pieces that are going to help in your understanding and kind of lay the groundwork for the rest of the material to follow. And we start off, we tried to assemble this training in a real logical flow so that you can kind of understand all the pieces, one building on the previous piece. So the logical first place to start was an overview of the system. And in this overview, again, a logical place to start was the importance of language. So we begin by talking about how the language we use can promote dignity and empowerment and support a recovery oriented approach and a person-centered approach. We thought that was a really important way to start and provides kind of some a good foundation for continuing our discussions later on. Then we move into the True Blood lawsuit, which Mo gave a great synopsis of, and we tie that in and talk about, how it contributes or how it was the impetus for all these changes coming down the pike, and all the resulting efforts that grew out of it. And then we talk about the forensic mental health system in Washington. And again, this lays out the framework, and we provide information on the agencies and organizations that are part of the forensic system in Washington, like DBHR, the Office of Forensic Mental Health Services, or OFMS with DSHS. And we give a little information about the jails and the courts and kind of what their roles are. And then lastly, we get into some specific detailed roles of different entities in the system. So we talk a little bit about forensic navigators, forensic evaluators, designated crisis responders, and of course, peer support. So we included this slide. It's from the curriculum, just to ensure that you kind of know what we're talking about when we talk about the system. So the forensic mental health system is comprised of the various entities that have a touch point to people who are involved with the criminal court system. So again, we talk about the jails, the courts, evaluation, treatment. So that would be competency restoration services and corrections, and may have a behavioral health condition. All right, so I'm going to pass it back to Mo to talk a little bit about peer support services.
There we go. So, the most favored COVID phrase, I was talking on mute. So peer support services. So I'm not going to go in depth about this because most of you do know about peer support services, but one of the main reasons that we go over this is it does go over how to best support somebody who's involved in our criminal court system. But it also gives a really good overview of peer support services for those individuals who are taking this training who are not familiar with peer support. So one of the things that I was really proud of, and I mentioned it earlier, is this training is not only for individuals who are providing peer support, but also for other people involved in our criminal court system that support people. So it could be jails. We've even had some attorneys ask about the training. It's pretty exciting. And so it's really building that knowledge base about peer support services and the importance of them. And then we do have a module on common behavioral health conditions. And this basically is a module that goes over signs and symptoms, things that you need to know. When you walk out of this training, you are not going to be able to diagnose anybody. We don't want that. We just want you to be able to recognize a sign or a symptom and learn how to react appropriately and getting people connected into their the services they need, or if they're in crisis. So it's just a basic overview of a lot of the common behavioral health conditions. And at the end, we do talk about some cultural considerations. And in the future, one of my dreams is to have a training on cultural disparity in our criminal court system as well for peers. So to show some percentages of individuals with behavioral health conditions. So it's huge. So we have 47.7 million people with a behavioral health condition, and this was back in 2018. And we also have 19.3 million with substance use disorder, and co-occurring is 9.2 million. And I think these numbers are actually higher than what they are reported here, because a lot of people don't report their illness due to stigma. So then I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer Popchak-Hakeem for this section. She is really well versed in a lot of these components.
Thank you, Mo. And I see there are a few questions, and we'll try to get to those in a minute. So in this section, I just want to go over a few of the key components. And again, we tried to, create a logical flow here. So we're moving from diversion to competency to stand trial to restoration, and then civil commitment and not guilty by reason of insanity. And I do see somebody had a question there. So the first one we want to start with is diversion, hugely important. And so in this module, we cover the concept of diversion. What is it? Why is it important? And we talk about, the whole process of diverting people from the criminal court system and into treatment. And here we also provide a good look and an in-depth discussion about the sequential intercept model. A lot of you may be familiar with the model, and we talk about how this framework helps to identify points of intersection and treatment and diversion for both pre-arrest and post-arrest. And we highlight some of the key objectives of diversion, which are preventing initial involvement with the criminal court system, decreasing admissions to jail, engaging individuals in treatment as soon as possible, minimizing the time moving through the criminal court system, and connecting people to community treatment options, and decreasing the rate of return or the recidivism. All right, so competencies, stand trial, and I saw there were a few questions here. Hopefully we might answer some of these as we go along. In the interest of time, I'm just gonna kind of move forward, but we haven't forgotten about your questions. So again, in this module, we are continuing with that logical flow, and we discuss competency to stand trial and define it, and talk about why is it important to determine competency. And in that discussion, we talk about the Dusky Standard, and the Dusky Standard basically says that a person accused of a crime needs to be able to consult with his or her attorney and have a rational understanding of the nature of their crime and be able to assist their attorney in their own defense. So we cover the Dusky Standard. In addition, we cover some of the Washington state statutes and rules around competency to stand trial. And we go step by step through the evaluation process. And this is super helpful for peers and anyone providing support to individuals that are going through this process, to just kind of help understand what those steps are and how a person moves through the process. We also have all the timelines that are in statute so that people can easily understand kind of the different pieces of the process. So after we talk about competency to stand trial, we move into competency restoration services. Again, we talk about what it is, why it's important, and we talk about, and in our discussions of competency restoration, we introduce the material that's used in Washington, which is the Breaking Barriers curriculum for competency restoration. And we provide an opportunity for participants in the training to kind of engage with that material, which I believe gives a real in-depth understanding to people that maybe haven't gone through the process. When you take part in looking at the material like that, so in depth, it can really facilitate understanding. So we're kind of excited that people have the opportunity to do that. We talk about the restoration process of being multimodal and individualized and evidence-based process. And we bring in information about cell orders and Harper hearings, because that's a significant piece. And we talk about some of the history and some of the court cases that are relevant for competency restoration as well. Lastly, we talk about civil commitment and NGRI, and we introduce both of these and talk a little bit about what civil commitment means and not guilty by reason of insanity and what that means. We talk about felony conversion or felony flip, as some of you may know. And again, back to civil commitment, when we discuss that, we also talk about kind of the role of a DCR and in regards to the civil commitment and the evaluation and treatment piece. Then we talk about the not guilty by reason of insanity process. And again, by walking through those steps and the different processes, it really helps you understand what is coming when individuals are involved in that, and helps better understand so that you can support folks. And so now I'll pass it off to Mo, and she's going to talk a little bit about the supportive approaches, which kind of, I think, neatly wraps up our curriculum.
So I'm going to talk about our supportive approaches. So we did 4 modules. We did trauma-informed care, crisis de-escalation, suicide prevention, and transition planning continuity of care. So trauma-informed care, we do go over that in our core CPC training, but we do go over it again here. I think it's really important that it is covered as much as possible because so many people experience trauma, and it's just good practice. I'm not going to go through a lot of this because we are short on time, and I want to make sure that we get our questions answered. One really good thing about this, though, is we talk about post-traumatic growth. And as part of our curriculum development, post-traumatic growth was brought up by one of our external work group members. Her name's Amy Grissel. And so that really triggered adding this important component into the module. We do go over crisis de-escalation. And I also believe this is important because people do escalate. And this is not something that we cover a lot or at all hardly in the core training. So we do go over this. It's a high level to enable participants to understand the concepts and techniques, while acknowledging that your employers or the people that hire you will give you additional training. In this module, we discuss what crisis is, and it offers, you know, somebody some skills to help a person who is experiencing, you know, crisis or experiencing that exceed their ability to cope. Again, it covers some common signs to crisis. It's just, it's a brief module, but it is really important that we as peers and other people, you know how to help somebody when they're going into crisis, and also know how to help ourselves. And it's more about our interactions, you know, with people. We can't control other people's reaction, you know, their actions, but we can definitely control our reactions. We do go over suicide prevention, and we use a model here called Be the One. And that is, it's called Be the One to Save a Life, and it's from the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. We have a very high rate of suicide, and so we want to make sure that the people who take this training understand the risk factors and warning signs. And this is the component that wraps up our training. So we have transition planning and continuity of care. It goes over the importance of transition planning and the best practices related to transition planning. So this is basically that warm handoff that we as peers can help people have into services. And we use the APIC model, which is basically assess, plan, identify, and coordinate. So we go over that plan in the module. And that really wraps up our continuing education training. And of course, it is, there's a lot more that people can learn about each of these modules, but we were trying to fit as much information we could into the 2-day training. And again, a little bit about the training. So we developed this training, and due to COVID, we were unable to roll it out into the format that it was intended. It was intended to be rolled out into a 2-day, very interactive training. Due to COVID, that was put on hold. But Jennifer and I did create some pre-recorded overview modules. So it's not the complete training, it is just an overview of each module. And those modules were posted yesterday on the HCA Peer Support webpage. And so you can view those and take your time to do that. And then I just want to wrap up our presentation before I introduce Lindsay Sizemore with this beautiful quote that was given to us by one of our external stakeholders, and her name's Terry Owen, and many of you might know her. She is a great training for our certified peer counselors. She says, before recovery, I spent a lot of time wondering, how can I get anywhere from here? I know now that I could not have gotten here from anywhere but there. So I just think that's a beautiful quote to round out our entire training. And so
hey, thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Can I jump in? There's a couple of questions coming through. I've been trying to watch them. So thank you, Abby, for throwing the C there for the APIC model. So there's a question, Mo. It says, can you talk a little more about the APIC model? What does the acronym stand for? And Abby says, assess, plan, implement, coordinate. That's correct. Or identify, coordinate. But I was wondering, is the manual available for people to take a look at least electronically or something? Because that might be helpful.
Yeah, currently we don't have the manual available electronically on the website. That is something that I would have to talk to leadership about getting posted. But if you do sign up, so the training is going to go into a virtual format, and the new Enhanced Peer Services Program Administrator, when they get on board, that will be something that they'll be working on getting going. And so once we have that going, definitely the participants will receive a copy of the manual, and I have it here. It's beautiful. So they will. So but right now we don't have it available electronically for general public, but that is something that I can work on.
But the transition plan is assess, plan, ID, or identify and coordinate. So that's great. And there was another question about, it says, besides Senate Bill 5444 for DSHS, are there funding for Department of Corrections? And that's a great question that I don't have an answer to at this time, but I definitely could try to find something and get it back out there. Do you have any answer to that, Mo?
I do not right now, but again, if we get that written down out of the chat box, we can get that back to you.
Correct.
I am going to stop presenting so that I can actually see some faces here. Okay. So do we have many?
All right, so
I'm sure there are.
It says, where do we go again for the literature HCA website? And it sounds like, go ahead.
So you can go onto the HCA website. So if you just put in your Google search bar, HCA peer support, the web page will come up. And on that web page, we have some continuing education. Can please, everybody please mute their speakers. Okay, so you can go to the HCA Peer Support webpage, and on that webpage, if you're not familiar with it, there are continuing education, online continuing education trainings that you can take. There is a separate section that says Enhanced Peer. So you're gonna wanna go to that section, and we have 9 modules posted there.
Okay, so then somebody says, I live in Skagit County, North Sound. When, if we would see True Blood being implemented in our region?
So right now, so as I said in the beginning, so we have the phase 1 implementation, and that is Southwest Washington, Spokane region, and then Pierce County, and then next is King County. I do not have an answer when it will be implemented in North Sound. Hopefully it will go across the state. I mean, I truly believe in True Blood and the good works that can come out of it.
I would say a lot of the changes, and I know from the Offham side, a lot of the things we're doing are systemic changes. So they're going to impact the region as a whole, regardless of the phases. I mean, the things that we're doing, you know, adding the bed space, some of those different things that DRW talked about in the video, those are going to make the system better, and the numbers for restorations and the timeframes definitely show that there is impact to the system happening. And Mo, can we, if folks have questions that we haven't fully answered, can they email you or something? And if need be, you can loop me in, or?
Yes, let me put my email in the chat. And please email me. I can get answers to your questions, and if I don't know them, I will definitely find answers and get back to you. And then I just also want to make clear that even though this is a True Blood element, this training is not limited to any of the phases. So anybody in the state of Washington can take the training.
And that's what kind of what I was saying about all these different things. Those phases are out there, and they're you know, concentrations for different pieces, but most of the things that I see being done are just impacting the system as a whole. I mean, the whole, all the forensic navigators that were hired for all the different areas, I mean, you know, and all the peers, it just affects the whole system. So okay, so if you have a question, something that I might be able to answer, go ahead and send it to Mo and she can find me. Supervisors or forensic navigators, that do they take the training? That is something that we are looking at, and that was an original concept for the training. Unfortunately, the workforce development administrator moved on to a different position in the state, and so things got a little slowed down a little bit, but in Offham's, we're definitely looking at those types of things. And we have worked closely with the forensic navigators, and they have used a large part of this curriculum in their training.
And so there's another question here, and then we'll get on to Lindsay Sizemore so she can get to her great information. So where can I find the training? So right now we don't have this training rolled out. Again, you can find the overview modules on the Peer Support HCA website. And please keep revisiting the HCA website for notifications of when this training will be rolled out virtually. Also, if you are not on the listserv that we have at HCA, please email me and I'll get you on that listserv, because we do put a lot of great information out there. And when we roll out the training, that information will be there.
And just to add real quick before we leave, I'm really excited that you guys are excited to take the training. I mean, that makes us feel really good. We try to be really thoughtful and inclusive of everyone when we developed this, and really worked hard to make the pieces and the elements relevant for everyone and give everyone good information to support folks. So I'm thrilled that you guys are excited about it.
Me too. So I'm going to introduce Lindsay Sizemore, and I know our session ends at 11, but I'm willing to stay on a little bit longer after that. If you have questions, we just want to get to Lindsay. So with further ado, here's Lindsay Sizemore. She is from Georgia, and I can't wait to take her training. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. I am grateful to be here. I just love learning about everything that's going on in Washington. I have a lot of exciting things to share with you today, and I'm just going to jump right into it. So why am I here? So the reason I'm even here is because in 2015, somebody saw something in me that, you know, I did not see it myself. I mentioned earlier in my introduction that I'm a woman in long-term recovery. So what that means is it's been 7.5 years now since I've needed to change the way I felt using any mind-altering substance. It's important to understand that when I was introduced to the forensic peer mentoring program, or to the criminal justice system, I should say, I entered this system in a very traumatic place. I had about 13 years of addiction. Mute my computer. 13 years of an addiction. I entered the system coming from over a year of homelessness, and I ended up, I had experienced losing my mother by suicide, actually, a week before I was incarcerated. At that time, I was currently facing potentially doing 20 years. And so, as you can see, like, I was at a pretty desperate place. I needed hope. I needed connection. Honestly, didn't know what I needed at the time, but anyway, when I was about 2 years into my incarceration, and it was 2015, my mental health counselor said, "Hey, you know, there's this new program that just started, and it looks like you need some support." You know, I had just entered from being in a place of homelessness. So I didn't want to be released into the community and not have any resources. I was basically vulnerable and terrified. So I was completely open and willing, which was, you know, kind of the opposite of my mindset from the very beginning. I had been on a journey to healing through recovery, checking out every single mental health book I could get my hands on inside the prison. But when I was introduced to the forensic peer mentoring program, I finally began to interrupt that story that I was telling myself. And I began to create this new vision for my life. I had always felt like I was reaching for something that wasn't there. And for the first time in my life, I had someone sitting in front of me who was living, breathing evidence telling me that, you know, they had been where I had been. They told me that I should start expecting recovery for my life. And I began to meet with this mentor once a week. And it became the highlight of my week. They began to help me feel what it felt like to have options again. You know, I was working on 3 years now in prison, and, you know, I had long since forgot, you know, what it felt like to be able to choose anything for my life. And so I began to feel empowered, and they walked with me as I created this reentry plan. I had no idea that later, through them planting seeds in my heart and my mind, helping me craft my story, helping me feel empowered, even on the outside as I walked into the community, I had no idea that I would be able to now lead this very program in the state of Georgia. And it just really goes to show how the system really believed in me. And, you know, you never know. And I know you guys know this because you're out there in the field and you're working and you're making a difference, but you just never know when someone's actually ready and they're listening, and today's the day. And so that was just where I was at when this program found me. You know, starting over and rebuilding my life was the hardest thing I had ever done. You know, and I did that with the help of a forensic peer mentor, piece by piece. It was not built back the same. It was built back on solid ground and with love for myself. And so today I'm excited and I'm very proud to be able to talk about what we are doing in the state of Georgia. And I wanted to share how the program found me, because I feel like it's very unique to be able to share that lived experience, and it definitely created who I am today. So basically, the Forensic Peer Mentoring Program, it started in 2015. You know, and I'm so glad it did, because that's right at that crossroads of my life where I was trying to rebuild. And so it started back in 2015. We partnered with the state of Pennsylvania. They came down and they helped us begin what was the Forensic Peer Mentoring Program back in 2015. We were having one training a year. Which technically wasn't that much, but we were going off of a Pennsylvania curriculum. And, you know, our goal in the Forensic Peer Mentoring Program is just to support and link returning citizens to the resources they needed so that they can have a successful reentry after a period of incarceration. So I was a part of that as it came to fruition. And so today, we're back in 2018, the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network, which is about a year after I was released from prison, I started my journey working in the field. And so 2018, the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network, we actually applied for a grant with the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration to help us expand the Forensic Peer Mentoring Program. As I said before, we were only able to do one training a year. So we wanted to, you know, get more funds so that we could produce more. And so we began to, we received the grant. We were granted a statewide consumer grant, and we were able to get together with all of our partners here in the state of Georgia. And we set out to hit every single region that the DBHDD, or the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, all 6 regions that they serve. We created 6 listening sessions. Okay, these listening sessions, we invited every justice-involved citizen that wanted to join. And our goal in these listening sessions were to ask, we're using an appreciative approach. And we asked, you know, what's working well? Where are the challenges? Where can we find improvement? Who are the recovery champions in this community? And so we just collected all this data, and we were meeting all the time, and we sat there, we created a new curriculum. This curriculum is now our new, we call it Ready for Reentry Forensic Peer Mentoring Training. Okay, so I'm going to go over a little bit about the content, but I think what's most important, and I heard you guys talking about your 2-day training that you have currently, I wanted to talk about all of the agencies. And if you guys, I know I'm talking really fast, so I'm trying to fit it all in, and I get excited. So if you have questions, just please, you know, send them in the chat box, and I'll definitely provide my information as well. But the biggest part of our training is actually a 5-day training. Okay. And so over the course of the 5 days, we have about 15 different presentations. These presentations, come from different agencies of all levels of the criminal justice system. We start off with the Georgia Pardon and Parole Board. They come and they set it and they talk. We have people from the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities come and talk. We have Department of Community Supervision, which is where people report. There's programs such as the day reporting centers, and people who are under supervision, under probation or parole when they are released from incarceration. So we have the Department of Community Supervision coming to talk. We have the Georgia Department of Corrections. We have a few people from the actual head offices of the Department of Corrections, as well as like from the counselor, mental health counseling areas of corrections. We have advocacy from the Georgia Justice Project come and talk about our current laws, what bills are in the waiting to be passed in the Senate. We have people from every level of the criminal justice system involved in this training, and the purpose behind that is so that the forensic peer mentors who come to this training, they can learn and grasp all the knowledge they can about the system, so that when we are working with our peers, we can help them navigate through the system versus falling deeper into the system. Okay, so, but it's also really amazing to have that collaboration with these agencies, because we're strengthening our ties with them. One thing that's important to understand, which all of you probably know, is, forensic peer mentors, they live with either a mental health or substance use challenge. They also have the lived experience in the criminal justice system. Okay, so obviously, once you become a forensic peer mentor, your job will be positioned in either a Georgia prison facility or either a Department of Community Supervision office. So strengthening those ties and those relationships with the criminal justice system is very important, because here we are and we're held to a higher standard. We have mentors with backgrounds, records. We're trying to strengthen those ties so that we can continue to provide justice and for the returning citizens who are in there. But we have to learn to work together, and so that's what's exciting. They're learning and growing, and so much every single time they come to present under our trainings. I am going to keep moving forward, but so it's a 5-day training. It is designed to be in person. I don't know. I can hear something in the background right now. I don't know what that is.
This is just a reminder to please mute yourselves if you are not talking. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to talk about a forensic peer mentor. We go in and we work into our prisons. We work with individuals who have a release date. They can begin working with them 3 to 18 months prior to the release date. The forensic peer mentor has the capacity to work with up to 20 returning citizens at a time. And I know that I shared a little bit of my personal experience, and my whole entire life has been changed because of this program. So if you're a numbers person, and you think about this, in the past year, we've been able to train 60 forensic peer mentors in our state. And if 60 forensic peer mentors have the capacity to work with 20 people, and only one person changed my life the way they did, can you imagine the 120 lives that, have this potential to and all the lives that are connected to them? Anyway, I love thinking about numbers like that. And so it's just beautiful. So yeah, we've been able to train 60 forensic peer mentors over the past year. Let's see. So in order, I talked about the qualifications to be a forensic peer mentor. We have an application process for our training. You have to have that certification. So it's not like you can just, come. You have to already be a certified peer specialist. Our applications, it's pretty competitive here in Georgia. And of course, funding, it can be a challenge at times, but we're able to train anywhere from 20 to this past training in July. We're only down to 10. I think that was a lot to do with COVID. But the applications, we have hundreds of applications. So that's really exciting. The hunger to do this work is exciting. It's also exciting just to be able to say, in order to be eligible for this training, you have to have this experience in the criminal justice system. In most of the world, something like that would make you ineligible to apply for the job, but that is actually a requirement. So I think it's cool sometimes when I have to explain, I'm sorry, you have to have the personal experience. And it just gives so much hope to the returning citizen that we are trying to work with. All right, so we work in day reporting centers within the Department of Community Supervision. We work in prison facilities. We also work at the Georgia Regional Forensic Hospitals, and we work at the Mental Health Accountability Courts. We're sitting at these tables when the decisions are being made. We're in case meetings. We're able to, stand up for our returning citizens and advocate in ways that we've never been able to do before. And if someone wants to be referred to a forensic peer mentor, they can go through their mental health counselor. So we work hand in hand with the mental health counselors. They can refer us. It's volunteer basis only. And you can work with your forensic peer mentor for however long that you feel like you need them. And personally, that meant a lot to me. I didn't really find out what the forensic peer mentoring program was all about until I really got released. First, I thought it was just a in-house program, but when they started knocking on my door and they followed me into the community as I got a job and as I got my car and I started rebuilding my life and I had that extra support, that's when the beauty of the program really, defined itself in my life. So I ended up working with my forensic peer mentor for an entire year. So I'm going to get into the content because I think that that's important in regards to the things that we discuss in our training. Okay, so we cover a lot of the projects that we do at the Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network. We also work with relationship enhancement skills. We also teach a section on recovery messaging. This is very helpful, not for just the peer that you're working with, but also in the professional staff that you are surrounded by. Being able to construct, hey, in a couple minutes, what it is you're here doing, what you bring to the table. It's really helping to strengthen those relationships, especially in the criminal justice system staff. We teach a section on intentional peer support. We talk about, mutuality and how there is no power over each other in the relationship, and how we can actually find power through our differences in communication and just being able to feel seen and heard, both people being felt. That's not coming out right. Both people in the conversation can feel seen and heard and comfortable and safe enough to say, hey, look, this is a little uncomfortable for me. And when both people realize that they can, share where they're at, I think the beauty of the relationship really comes out, and that trust and that connection that forensic peer mentors can bring is everything. They just can't find it like that anywhere else. I heard you guys mention the sequential intercept model. We do a little section on that as well. The old training, when Pennsylvania was with us, they spent a little bit of time every single day on the sequential intercept model. So we've condensed it. We chose the areas where the forensic peer mentor comes into play, and we just focus on, give about maybe an hour and a half of time in our training on the sequential intercept model. The next thing we talk about reentry planning. We talk about the recidivism risk score and how to utilize that, how when someone is, released from a period of incarceration and they're on some sort of supervision, how to teach the peer to speak to their officer, or to speak and say, hey, well, where am I at on my recidivism risk score? Can I see this? And it's just like turning the tables and reminding our peers how, they can feel empowered and gain information that's their right as well. We use something called the Forensic Wellness Recovery Action Plan. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but the RAP plan is what I used whenever I was, doing my reentry plan and I was getting prepared to be released as well. And it's just the opportunity to be able to create your own plan. What does it look like when things are going well? What does it look like when things are breaking down? What does it look, or if things are breaking down, who do I want you to contact? Who do I not want you to contact? And it just helps me take back my life in a sense, but also have a plan written down on paper that I can access. So we go over that. We also have a trauma-informed responses section. And it's just a matter, it can be utilized with officers as well as forensic peer mentors, and just how to improve those responses, how to help the individual you're working with. How do they feel safe? How can we let them know what's about to happen next? How can we have a universal assumption of trauma? And how can we advocate for that returning citizen who is on the inside if some sort of behavior has come about, and we as a forensic peer mentor can go over to the officer and explain that this behavior is probably something that's been triggered, trauma's been triggered. It's not necessarily, the fact that they're a bad returning citizen or a bad person, you know. And so helping the system gain understanding that this is somebody who has been triggered from trauma is so important, and it's changing lives. It's changing lives in the court system. It's just unbelievable, just having people shift their minds to looking for that untold story versus just focused on just the behavior and then punishing, and definitely not promoting recovery for that individual who's incarcerated. So I told you we'd heard from Department of Corrections, Department of Community Supervision. We go over just, we have a self-care component of our training, and we talk about how to continue to grow as a forensic peer mentor. And so after the training's over, the forensic peer mentor they're given a credential. And so this is something that they will be able to use throughout, you know, their job search. So a lot of them are already employed. We are trying to be having stationed forensic peer mentors in every single prison facility in our state, but that's not happened yet, but we are striving for that. Our data is unbelievable. We have like 1% recidivism, like right now. Everybody who's been served, who has utilized the forensic peer mentoring program. And this is where all the hype's really coming from. The fact that we truly are reducing recidivism and promoting recovery, and they can't ignore it. And so we're able to continue to get funding, and it's hopeful, and the word is spreading. And so if you guys have any questions about, I'm gonna, I guess, leave some time to talk about, if you guys have questions about the curriculum content, anything from my personal story, the forensic peer mentoring program gave me back my life. You know, I have a life of purpose, and, you know, I like to say, you know, I went from running from the same police officers and the same systems that I now sit at the same exact tables with, and we work together for positive change. And you know, I have the state and federal, I mean, the feds are the ones who arrested me that day, and now the feds are the ones who designated me the director of the entire program. And it just speaks recovery. And you know, I wouldn't have been able to know that I could do any of that had it not been for people like you and people who, you know, take that time to meet somebody at their lowest place. And here I am talking to the state of Washington about this program and what we're doing. And, you know, I have a whole team. I'm not doing this by myself over here. So if you guys have any questions, you know, I'd love to be able to, you know, help share what we're doing, share the work that we're doing. We're pulling off 3 trainings a year right now. Our next training will be virtual. Somehow we were able to pull off an in-person training in July, but it was intense with all of the guidelines and everything like that. So we are going to do a virtual training in November. But 60 new forensic peer mentors are now, you know, in Georgia over this past year, and just reporting those numbers it's just quite amazing. So anyway, if you guys have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Thank you, Lindsay. That was wonderful. And I was really excited to be in your training, and then COVID happened. And yeah, I'm hoping that I can participate in that at a later date. And that brings up a question from Scott Robertson. He asked, can you only be certified as a forensic peer mentor if you live in Georgia, or do they recognize Washington State CPC certification?
So this particular training is for the state of Georgia. We are hoping that by next year we can take this training all over the country. That is a vision that we have, and we would have to get with you know, your state agencies as well, and make a new service definition for that state, so that it would include you know, this credential for you as well.
And then so we have another question from Heather Maxwell Reichart. It says peer mentor program is voluntary. Did she hear that correctly?
Yes, if you want to participate, if you're a peer, if you're a returning citizen, and you're incarcerated, or you have you know, you need a forensic peer mentor, then yes, it is voluntary. Nobody's made to go through this program at all. And so it just wouldn't work if you were made to be a part of it. And so, yeah, and then anybody can, if you want to move forward with your career, you want to move forward with your impact, and you want to, apply for the forensic peer mentoring, that too, you can most definitely do that. Sometimes agencies want you to have that credential, but trust me, we have hundreds of applications that I have to go through every 3 months. So, and you guys can go on, you can go on the gmhcn.org website, and you can actually read a lot more about the, it's called the Ready for Reentry Forensic Peer Mentoring Training.
So there's been a couple comments about your language, about what is it? What do you call a citizen reentering? I just lost
returning
my language.
citizen. Returning
yes,
citizen.
We love that.
Yes.
I like that.
So we think there's nothing more offensive than saying offender, and then inmate isn't really positive either. So in our state, our language is, we are returning citizens, and then I'm even moving towards I am a return citizen. And so I think that holds power as well. So
yes, it does. And I know one of the language things that we have worked with the True Blood settlement is addressing, I call it the criminal court system, and we're trying to use that language instead of the criminal justice system, because really justice doesn't define, it's not a great definition of what we have right now. So does anybody have any other questions? And I know there's a link in the chat box here to do an eval of our presentation. If you could please take that, we'd greatly appreciate that. And I think Lauren said if you don't, you're going to lose your pot of gold, because the leprechauns lose their pots of gold. So if you don't have any more questions, I think we are about to end. Any questions?
If you guys need my email address, Mo, will you provide that for them?
I certainly will.
I was a little rushed, so if you guys have you guys want to chat, let's do it.
Sounds great. I'm going to put her email in the chat box right now. Yeah?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If sounded like somebody wanted the email address for Lindsay in the chat box.
Doing it right now. Okay. Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, Jennifer, for presenting today. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you, guys.
everyone.
We'll see you back in the main room after break.